Dumbledore was very close to the Potters and Sirius Black, and I just don't think that he was convinced that the story was what the Ministry was putting out there.
And I think that's evidenced by the fact that he so readily believes when Harry comes back and he's like, Sirius is innocent or whatever, and he says, oh, save this innocent life. He almost doesn't question it any further. I don't think he knew all along, but I think it was he had heavy suspicions and then trust Harry enough to be like, all right, my suspicions were correct. Because if anyone has to be angry towards Sirius, the Sirius that the public has concocted, it would be Harry.
Yeah.
So if Harry's being like, no, Sirius is innocent, like that means a lot coming from him.
Guys, I think Caleb's absolutely right. Dumbledore knew Sirius as a child and maybe didn't ever believe it. What if Dumbledore helped get him into the castle?
That's a little much.
Yeah, it's a stretch.
We actually got a Twitter question from Schwaby702. It says, why didn't Dumbledore use legitimacy on Sirius to ascertain the truth and use that to free him? So, and I think what we're saying is that Dumbledore kind of knew
Sirius
already.
didn't have a trial.
Right, and Dumbledore wasn't, because he didn't have a trial with the way the Ministry was, had created this story. Like, Dumbledore was not in a position where he could just go and use that. Like, he still has a public figure to uphold, and he couldn't just walk in.
I also have a problem with, I can never pronounce this word, legitimacy. In a free will kind of aspect of not giving someone the choice to reveal that information about themselves, and you see, like, obviously Snape abuses that power. It seems like Sirius does to a degree too, but I don't think Dumbledore really, I don't know, but I wouldn't abuse that power, because people deserve to not have to share information. But
I definitely agree with that, and there's also the fact that I believe memories are alterable, as has been proved with Slughorn. So it's possible that maybe you use legitimacy on a convict, but someone else has gotten there first.
Yeah, but Dumbledore knew it was altered, so I feel like they would know if it was.
And I think memories are different than thoughts.
Right.
Yeah.
Completely.
Like active thoughts.
What if someone's under the Imperious Curse?
Oh, interesting.
So what are you suggesting Dumbledore should have resorted to the Imperious Curse to figure it all out?
I'm saying Dumbledore has a pretty strong sense of character.
What would the Imperious
That's
Curse
like
have called?
waterboarding.
I think more like Veritaserum than the Imperious.
Well, here's the thing. I think if you use the Imperious Curse on someone, what if their thoughts are very much aligned with the bad deed that they did because they have been controlled to do it, and therefore you use legitimacy? If they've been imperious before, it doesn't matter what thoughts you read in the moment because they really shouldn't be responsible for that act that they did.
Alright, yeah. Well, yeah, that's why the Imperious Curse is illegal. Well, for many reasons, it's also a free will thing. That people can be held responsible for doing heinous things.
I agree.
Yeah, I think in general, like there's so much stuff about morality and free will in the series. But I think Snape and Dumbledore have such a strong sense of character that they can just sort of do it on the fly just by looking at you. And that's sort of the best way to do it, as opposed to just kind of grabbing them in a room and doing it, really kind of going in with your wand in a more invasive way.
We have this really funny Twitter question from someone, because we know that in the movie and the book, they do it slightly different. In the movie, Hermione slaps him. In the movie, she punches him. When they're about to go on the time travel.
No.
Yeah. So when Hermione punches Malfoy in Prisoner of Azkaban.
Great scene.
And the question was on Twitter, and this is from Oogie0811. Did Malfoy reveal that he was slapped/punched by a girl, aka Hermione? I don't think that'd be something he'd be really willing to talk about. Crabbe and Goyle already witnessed it, so.
Well, now that I've been saying this throughout all of our prisoner discussion in regards to him and Buckbeak, that for how much Malfoy was tormenting Harry about the Dementors affecting him, that it seemed like the logical thing for everyone to do would be to turn that right back around on Malfoy and be like, oh, you're crying over Buckbeak and you got like a scratch, but no one does that. That I almost, as much as I would say, Draco wouldn't want to tell anyone, he did with Buckbeak. He didn't seem to care about his own manly pride. Doesn't seem to have much. So I think he would just.
I'm not sure
look
brag
what she
about
did to
it.
me.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I mean, I think about Draco. I think it was a huge hit to his masculinity. I mean, in a way, in the sense of he's the sort of main leader of the Goro Crab crew, and for someone like Hermione, who's arguably second in command in the trio, to punch him in the face, it's that totally took him down.
It always goes to gender issues with you, doesn't it?
It always comes to gender issues with me.
Oh, we got some questions.
Do you guys both want to come up?
And she was about to
I just wanted to point out that I don't think Hermione is really second in command in the trio, because I think one of the good things about the trio is that they're very inclusive. So even though Harry is undoubtedly the leader, I feel like they're all sort of on sort of equal ground a lot of the time. Because if you think about it, in Sorcerer's Stone, when they're figuring everything out, like all of them have to work together to figure out, like Harry couldn't do it on his own, whereas if Malfoy wants to do something, he doesn't really need Crabbe and Goyle. All they do is follow him around. So I feel like...
Right, and I don't mean to put Hermione in a Crabbe and Goyle position.
Please don't.
All I'm saying is that, and just to be frank, I feel like Hermione is there at the end. Like, you remember in the Sorcerer's Stone movie when Ron sacrifices himself very nobly on the chessboard? Very dramatically. And then Hermione tells Harry, you know what? You have to go on and you have to do this sort of thing. And I think that moment, this is not canon, but I think it really kind of captures the sense of the trio. Harry is the one who has to kind of go forth and do stuff. And at the end of the day, as great as Hermione is, and she's certainly, this isn't about equality, she's in this supporting role for Harry. And just as much as Ron is, I would say, is a supporting role for Harry in different ways. So I'm aligning Ron and Hermione. And not putting Hermione down, but Harry is this clear leader. He's the one who is actively, they've chosen him to do stuff. And in as much as Joe engages this hero story where it is a male, this is sort of what mega feminists would argue is engaging patriarchy, frankly, that it is the man who must go forth and do this thing, which many world organized stuff also has that at its core, which is the man does this, which we should be skeptical of.
What if Harry had been born a girl?
But I do think, as far as that goes, I see Ron as almost serving, whereas Hermione's able to serve like a million different functions for Harry. Ron has come through a lot, but there've been like very specific times. He's less useful in a general sense, whereas like he did the wizard chess. He destroyed the Horcrux. He achieved almost like specific tasks that Harry obviously needed him, and he just obviously needed him for the moral support of just having a best friend. But yeah, Ron kind of served very specific tasks when he's almost not less useful than Hermione, but less frequently useful.
But that's absolutely true. But to that extent, he's lived in Harry's shadow a bit for so long, and he's had to struggle with that. I kind of what is that like for Ron? As this total.
Well, I mean, we go through that in the next book with him. So
Yeah.
Let's hold up.
You have a thought?
Yes, I have a kind of silly theory about why Hermione has snapped so much.
I love silly theories. It's terrible.
Okay.
He does.
Well,
King of
bear
it.
with me. She's been time traveling like every single day, and so her body processes have sort of sped up, as well as she's now a teenager. So, boys, I'm sorry, but do you think she might have had PMS during that moment?
Oh, here we go. I'm
Well,
gonna clock out of that one.
Have her body processes sped up, or has she just been staying up many more hours in the day than they have? And anyone would get tired from that.
Yes, well, that means, she's sort of been living 3 days in one. So, yeah, she's kind of
Drinking
have
a lot of
been,
coffee?
like, living 3 times more than everybody else right now at her 13-year-old self.
She's not getting enough sleep.
Is PMS real, or is it just an idea that becomes real because everyone buys into the social norm?
No, it's real.
Anyway.
So I actually have a quick side note question that we come up to a lot in the show. I'm thinking about like Ron is like very specific moments, or Hermione is more helpful throughout the series. I think in general, and there's more like collaboration I think between Hermione and Harry than any other combination of the three. So like I want to know how many of you guys like early in the series when you were reading were Harry and Hermione shippers like I was. That you really? Come on. So you guys were Ron and Hermione from the start?
I wasn't thinking about it enough when they were like 11. Like I didn't start caring about shipping until they were old enough where that mattered. But it wasn't like when they were in the early books.
Wait, we got a lot of comments from the crowd right here. So please, somebody new, come up to the microphone. Tell us your thoughts on shipping, on the Harmony ship. And
Harmony. Oh, it's been
It's
been a minute since I've heard that.
anybody? I mean, I don't know. I think it works. We're gonna move past Harmony. Ellie,
right, my ship.
Ellie, do you have any kind of fun ship? So shipping is I don't know if you're familiar with the term. It's kind of a fandom idea of like these two characters we want to get together. Are there any characters in the Harry Potter series that you want to see together?
I think when Ron first meets Hermione on the train, I think from then on he's always kind of liked her and known that, and then I think it breaks his heart when she returns, I think in the Chamber of Secrets, when she comes back and her and Harry run and then like embrace, and then she stands there, she goes hug Ron and then she doesn't and just shakes his hand. I think Ron's heartbroken then. I felt really sorry for him because I think he's always liked her from then on, and I think it was quite hard on him, and Hermione sort of broke his heart.
They were about your age now in that movie when they filmed that scene in Chamber of Secrets. They were your age.
Really?
Well, yeah, like 12, 13.
Oh, yeah.
It's cool stuff.
So should we move on to part of the show we always do is a special feature, and one of the things we decided to do with the show is we're going to talk about the new Pottermore information, because nobody has ever talked about that before. So today we're going to talk about Hogwarts portraits.
How do you guys feel about Pottermore in general? It's such a polarizing thing. How many of you guys are like really already over it and angry about it?
Everybody give a hand for Pottermore.
Yay.
How many people are still big fans of it?
The information.
That's the thing is
Okay.
that as much as I refuse to say I like Pottermore because I don't. I hate Pottermore. I like the new information and I just want it given to me and like just like in the same way that I like J.K. Rowling's writing.
How about an encyclopedia? Put a clap for that.
Encyclopedia.
So it's nothing to say to Pottermore. It's still J.K. Rowling's talent. that I'm
So when Rowling listens to this episode, as she listens to all of ours, she'll hear all the fans clapping for the encyclopedia.
Not just the information, but there could be so many different special features that Pottermore could do.
Yeah,
More engagement, more interaction.
Maybe less frustrating potions.
That's the thing is.
That's right.
I know. I will second that because that's when we are preparing for the show. We have to read up on the Pottermore things. I can never get past the game, so I can't get.
I'm the only one that's caught up.
No, like I have to get the information from Kat because I'm like stuck trying to get like the mandrakes or whatever.
You know what I want? I want them to simulate a Quidditch game, like that for all the fans to just watch, and somehow all the houses somehow make the Quidditch teams win and play each other, and everyone watches this great scene online.
You have a Pottermore comment?
Yes. I originally was a beta for Pottermore and I was all excited. And while it's really just not as good as it could have been, like it was interesting seeing it advance and some of the things have changed. Like it became a lot more interactive, especially as the books went on. So they did take notice. However, it still got really boring after a while. And all I just kept saying was, can I just get the information already? Why can't I just download all of it now?
Yeah, and that's my problem with it is if this is their job to like make this whole interactive thing and they're really only gonna do it going through the books once, I think that there should have been something at every single scene. Not necessarily even just more information, but just something to do that isn't just picking up a chocolate frog. That serves really no purpose.
Yeah.
So, has anyone not heard the new information on the portraits? A lot of hands just went up.
Yeah, so maybe
We just covered all. We just read it.
Should I just read the new information? Do you guys want to hear it?
Yeah.
It's new information, Kat. Of course they want to hear it.
It's like 5 paragraphs. I'm not that good at reading them. Okay. All right, so it says, Hogwarts portraits are able to talk and move around from picture to picture. They behave like their subjects. However, the degree to which they can interact with the people looking at them depends not on the skill of the painter, but on the power of the witch or wizard painted. When a magical portrait is taken, a witch or wizard artist will naturally use enchantments to ensure that the painting will be able to move in the usual way. The portrait will be able to use some of the subject's favorite phrases and imitate their general demeanor. Thus, Sir Cadogan's portrait is forever challenging people to a fight, falling off its horse and behaving in a fairly unbalanced way, which is how the subject appeared to the poor wizard who had to paint him. while the portrait of the fat lady continues to indulge her love of good food, drink, and tip-top security long after her living model passed away. However, neither of these portraits would be capable of having a particularly in-depth discussion about more complex aspects of their lives. They are literally and metaphorically two-dimensional. They are only representations of the living subject as seen by the artist. Some magical portraits are capable of considerably more interaction with the living world. Traditionally, a headmaster or headmistress is painted before their death. Once the portrait is completed, the headmaster or headmistress in question keeps it under lock and key, regularly visiting it in its cupboard, if so desired, to teach it to act and behave exactly like themselves, and imparting all kinds of useful information and pieces of knowledge that may then be shared through the centuries with the successors in office. The depth of knowledge and insight contained in some of the headmasters and headmistresses' portraits is unknown to any but the incumbents of the office and the few students who have realized over the centuries that the portrait's apparent sleepiness when visitors arrive in the office is not necessarily genuine.
So one thing I really love about that is just listening to it again, it reminds me almost of presidents, like here in America, when they get their portraits done while they're still in office. Obviously, we know those don't talk, or do they? Whatever. But I'm so glad she shared the information about the headmasters and headmistresses. I mean, that's something we had talked about on the show for so long.
And we were dead on.
And
just saying.
we were pretty accurate on you. Do you have a thought over there for us?
Yeah.
Sorry, I keep coming with your
No, you're great. You're part of the show.
Well, the thing I was curious about that this didn't answer was the fact that if you remember when Mr. Weasley was poisoned by Nagini, one of the headmaster's portraits went to St. Mungo's, and obviously they have two portraits there, so were they both painted at the same time? Because she can go in either portrait. There's not two, like she's either in one or she's in the other. Like, so I was wondering how that worked, and that wasn't answered, and that disappointed me.
But then what about the fact that the fat lady, when she gets struck, she can move into another person's?
I think she's saying these are two portraits of the same.
They're two portraits of the same person, which is why it can
Alohomora.
travel from the Ministry of Magic to the Hogwarts to Dumbledore's office, and also there's another one that
Maybe
can
it
travel
looked
from
like a
Dumbledore's
landscape
office
because they
to
went there.
the St. Mungo's to warn them.
I hear you. I'm just saying that if the figures, arguably in the paintings, can travel to each other's paintings anyway, why would these two paintings have had to be painted simultaneously for them to travel back there?
But then there would be two of her and not just one. I think.
Well, I mean, it's not that they were painted even simultaneously, but if they're two different reflections, going either way, it could. If it's just the two-dimensional one, it's could be two different artists' interpretation of the person, and that's now two different kind of representations of that person. Or if they did the thing where they talk to the portrait and teach it about themselves, do they do that equally to the same portrait? It's just kind of comparing the two different representations of someone that was painted twice.
But that's good to know. I like that the information tells us how Dumbledore put all of that into his portrait for Snape. I mean, that answers that question.
Yeah, because obviously that last year of Dumbledore's life, he knew he was dying.
Right.
So he had the opportunity to
Exactly.
impart a lot of knowledge.
But that's which is kind of weird in a way. So to what extent are these figures in the paintings conscious, or like consciously aware and can like change their opinions, gather information, or are they sentient? So Ellie, what do you think of the sort of portrait world? So we have these kind of vast theories of this idea of the figures in portraits existing like a parallel dimension, or that is kind of they talk to each other. How real are these figures?
I'm not really sure, but I think that with all the time that people have had, it depends how long they've known that they were going to pass. So with Dumbledore, he knew really early on that he was dying, so he had a lot of time to teach the portrait, I guess. But when the portrait is first painted, I think they have no idea who they are, and they need to learn who they are, which I think that if any of the other portraits, if someone doesn't know they're dying, but they paint it, and then they die, but they haven't taught the portrait. How do they know? How does the portrait know how to act like that person?
You're saying Dumbledore might have taught his own portrait.
How to act like himself, so that he has maybe the same knowledge as Dumbledore does. But how do other portraits know what knowledge or how to act like that person when they might when the actual person might not have known
What
they
about
were
the
done.
pictures on the
I think only the
trumpet
headmasters and
fronts?
headmistresses get theirs painted ahead of time.
Yeah, and
Well, those don't talk.
So so Dumbledore like implanted
Still
certain
matter.
bits of information
Those
to.
are photographs.
and we
That's really cool. I like it a lot.
on the show, I've come around, but everyone but me believed, obviously, that Dumbledore had spent a lot of time with his portrait. My original thought was that he didn't,
Bless you.
just because I saw that my initial reaction towards it was a vanity thing, like someone wanting to spend all this time with their portraits so that they forever live on. And Dumbledore never struck me as someone that that would care, especially since he has so much more important things to do with the Horcruxes and everything in his final time. My initial reaction was that he just wouldn't care. Like, who cares when I die? Like, I die, and who cares about my portrait? But I was yelled at by everyone, and
I would care a lot about my portrait.
And I just said
we'll get there. But,
I wish we all had portraits and we could like talk to each other, and we were like going different places.
but I've come around in that you guys were, and all the commenters on the forums that were like, Laura's wrong. Of it being a responsibility thing, rather than it being a matter of vanity.
Well, I think according to this information, JK is calling you wrong. So that's,
Ultimate shutdown.
you have a comment?
Yes, and it's about the different portraits as well as it ties in with yours, Ellie. And I think that there is sort of like one master portrait person for in this big portrait world, but all of the different representations sort of combine their knowledge, which is if a headmaster didn't spend much time, then they would get this information from like the other portraits that got painted of him.
Good.
As well as with Phidias Vigella's, most of his portrait, not in the office, was a muddy canvas, as was explained, that talked even though he wasn't there. So it was sort of like that there was only one, but they can travel between all the different portraits that they have more readily than in different portraits of
As part of the portrait world, right? World, parallel universe.
Right.
But that's a good point. They all talk to each other, and there's like this whole collection of knowledge that all the portraits probably know. So they're kind of keeping up to date with all world events as they go. Do another.
Yeah. Speaking of the headmaster portraits and like teaching them about themselves and that sort of thing, I just had like a wonderment about, not really like a statement, but whether they're capable of independent thought, like if they're taught all the memories and things that the headmaster himself or herself knows, but if someone were to ask them a question, if they can only relate information that they, like specifically that they were taught and that they know, or if they can make their own conjectures about, something like that. Like if they have Dumbledore's wisdom to be able to, if Dumbledore's portrait would be able to come to the conclusions that Dumbledore would be able to come to, just because, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I have a thought on that. At least when Dumbledore is talking to Harry at the end, he kind of gives him more advice rather than making like he's not really making an analytical thing, like figuring something out, but he's giving him advice. So I think that it kind of has to do with Dumbledore teaching him his own morals and values, and the same way everyone makes a decision. People make a decision based on their own beliefs and values and what they believe is morally right. So he kind of would instill those values in him, so the now portrait has said values and can create decisions.
Yeah, I feel like what you asked is something we've talked about before, and I don't think that they have independent thought, but I know Noah does.
I'm with Kat on this. I don't think they can learn. I don't think they can.
Right. Learn anything past the information they already know.
No, I agree with that. You don't have to single me out.
Oh, you changed your mind?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, okay.
I can change my mind.
So, if we were to paint portraits of each other, we talked about this last night. What would they be?
Knowing it was serious.
So I was thinking about what Noah's portrait would look like, or what it would be doing.
They were
rather.
teaching the portraits.
I think for the most part there will in the background there would definitely be a desk pig going back and forth like between the two forms. Like it starts as a
Give
desk
them
and then moves to a
information to the
pig and back and forth.
headmasters.
I don't think the setting of the portrait is too important, but I think that what the portrait's doing, like Noah's always just trying to like grab the attention of anyone walking by to explain some like important theory, try to get them on his side. Because even in death, Noah would want to just try to give them everything he's got.
Actually, in death, I'd want to explain what was going on to the person, but maybe my portrait couldn't really accurately explain that. And I would make Kat's portrait, and she would of course be surrounded by many fluffy animals.
That's it?
No,
Okay.
a Harry Potter shrine with all things, and at the very top, I'm thinking like that character who plays. If I get the actor's name wrong, it'll just be terrible.
Okay.
Neville, what's his name? Matthew Lewis. Matt Lewis. You did Matt Lewis right at the top in your painting.
Why
and
Matt Lewis?
Why Matt Lewis? Because you confided me in private that you think he's pretty.
Let's not put personal what's out.
As far as what would her character be like? What would her traits be?
Besides just kind of looking at
Is the only
Matthew Lewis
thing
on top of the Harry Potter
How
shrine.
would she interact with people passing by?
I mean, how does Kat? It would kind of be how Kat normally interacts, kind of going around and looking and being very observing that she is. She's
Like a
very
cat.
like a cat, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so I decided that I would do Laura's portraits. And Laura, for those of you that don't know, is very into journalism and wants to be a travel writer and work for National Geographic. So I see her, I feel like her portrait might be somewhere exotic, like in the desert or
Wait,
you
we're
know,
in the desert.
at the top of a mountain or something, and she would have backpacks and water bottles and notebooks and cameras.
Ooh, that's good.
And she would just ask inquisitive questions to every person that walked by. You like it?
I like it.
All right.
Ellie, sorry, Laura.
Caleb. Caleb kind of alluded to this as far as the teaching your portrait. Caleb would be sitting with his portrait,
Be
teaching
gentle.
it for hours on a day, just like everything. So just, yeah, what we were saying, the vanity aspect
Teaching
of
them
it.
about what?
Well, Caleb would be saying, just eye rolling the entire time. Every time a portrait anyone walks by, is just eye rolling and going, ugh. But, Caleb would be, he's very into
Irish pride.
Yeah, Irish pride, where the Minerva's my homegirl t-shirt, perpetually on. And I think Caleb's very into politics, probably be a politician one day. So I think in the same way the presidential portraits are made, just in the suit, but perpetually eye rolling.
Yeah. So now Ellie, we want to ask you, if you had to describe and pick how J.K. Rowling's portrait would be, what do you think that would be like?
I would paint her as a calm and elegant and a person that whenever anyone walks past, she'll always comfort them. She'll always give help to anyone who needs it, to anyone who deserves it. And I think if I had to paint the picture, I think she would be sat at a traditional wooden desk with a huge library behind her, with a pen and a pad in front of her, and just sat there thinking of what could happen next and using her surroundings to write and paint a picture.
Is she writing more Harry Potter?
Tell us.
No, like in her portrait. Tell me that's what she's writing.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yay! Perfect.
So, Ellie, actually, I think I asked you this at breakfast. If they did like a Harry Potter movie revamp in 30 years, would you reprise the role of Lily Potter as an older?
I think that'd be a good idea. Since I played it when I was young, I could play as the mum. Be the big girl.
That would make sense.
That would be perfect.
Would you guys see that movie?
Keith would probably disagree and say no more movies though, right? So we got a lot, really quick, we just wanted to touch on the Marauders map because we did get quite a bit of information on the new Pottermore stuff there. Kat, you want to highlight maybe the new stuff we got on?
I don't have that.
Oh.
Well, I mean, the information it touched on was how how Fred and George figured out the map, like why it was created.
How